One of my favorite sayings that I talk about in my business every day is when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And when it comes to cybersecurity, it's simply not enough to install a bunch of tools to protect you and your business. And simply installing a bunch of these security tools without putting a cybersecurity plan in place can have a lot of negative impacts. Missing critical gaps that exist in your IT infrastructure, overspending on IT tools and services, and ultimately, data breaches. This is why it's so important to focus on information security. Now, if you work in IT, you've likely heard of the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, ISO 27001, or CIS Critical Security Controls. These are all security frameworks that are designed to help you and your organization begin to build a culture of compliance and security. Today, I'm chatting with Leia Shilobod, CEO of Intech Solutions out of Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Leia is not only a certified information security manager, but she's also an expert in IT documentation and information security. Leia and I will be chatting about one particular security framework today known as CMMC, which is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, created for contractors who work with the U.S. Department of Defense. If you're curious about security frameworks, or you're one of those IT folks who's been meaning to start working on your organization's overall security posture, then this is the episode for you. This is the podcast for hardworking IT people who love technology, cybersecurity, and access to the coolest new tech tools. Welcome to Legends of IT. Welcome to Legends of IT. I'm your host, Ross Brous, and today I am with my guest, Leia Shilobod from Intech Solutions, and she is located in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. Now, Leia, I think what a lot of people that may listen to this episode won't know is that you and I have been friends for quite a while and talk pretty frequently about the topics that we're going over today, which is information security and documentation. But since that's the case, I don't want to make assumptions here because there's a lot of stuff that we talk about that I know. Why don't you take a minute and just explain to everybody who you are, what you do, and why that's important?
I started my company, Intech Solutions, which is a managed services provider in Greensburg, PA, right outside of Pittsburgh, in 2006. So I guess that makes us about 16 years old, if my math is right. I'm not very good at math. So, back when we started the company, we did have a security focus. Mostly this is what I felt was more logic, right? Like, how do we engineer something or configure it in a way that is secure logically? That was fine. We kind of had, it was a small company, kind of had a shared consciousness, as it were. But as we kept adding people, recognized that, they came from different places and we couldn't just, like connect a crossover cable from my brain to their brain and download everything. So you need another mechanism. And that's when we started to implement systems and processes so we could have the same outcome, right? Because like if I put a computer out, I want it to look the same every single time. Decreases rework, increases security and trust, makes things faster, all that kind of thing. And that worked all right, but we're still working on sort of like Leia's best practices instead of, which is like, not awful. But, I'm definitely not the smartest person in the world. Then one of my clients came forward and told me they had to comply with this thing called NIST 100-171 and that it was required in their contracts. So I was like, oh, okay, I got to learn this thing. And for those of you that don't know, that it's a special publication put out by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And it specifies how to protect controlled and classified information, so government information that's been unclassified on non-governmental systems. In other words, like, you and me, the regular companies out there. And I was absolutely in love because now I see this document that's illustrating controls that need to be put into place. In other words, those security standards and controls. That is not just Leia. Some of it was great validation for what we were already doing, and then a lot of things also really made us think and dive in. That really changed the face of my MSP because it made us start to build our services against specific standards. And then even though all of our clients don't require this compliance, it still made us kind of level up our company and the services that we are providing for everyone. So systems and processes, compliance is like really right now what I love and do every single day. I actually authored a package of IT policies, plans, procedures, lists, and other bag of tricks to help companies to align with the CMMC compliance, which is kind of like the next generation of NIST 800-171. I love talking about CMMC compliance. In fact, usually when I start talking about it, I can't stop. So I tell people there's a safe word. It's pickles. Ross already knows my safe word. So if we go too far and you hear pickles, that means reel it in, Leia.
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly important for any organization to have this type of documentation and process in place. Now, I know you have this IT documentation toolkit that you've created, and I use it in my own business, which has been insanely instrumental in helping me to get all of my own IT policies really nailed down. But I think there's a lot of businesses out there today that really believe that they just don't have any kind of a compliance requirement. And while that may be true, I think with state legislation, national legislation, or even just cyber liability requirements for insurance purposes, having this documentation and this type of compliance in place is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And to your point, it is actually a requirement. If you're in business, there are compliance requirements that impact your business, and even if you don't think there are, so here's a good example of what maybe you don't think. So like say that you start up a company and you're going to detail some cars and you're taking everything in cash, and the government doesn't know about it, and you made $30,000 this year. So you are required to file and pay taxes on that. Now, maybe you don't because, maybe you're not going to get caught, right? But that doesn't mean you're not supposed to. And it's kind of the same thing with some of these compliance requirements. You need to protect card holder data, right? So if you take credit cards, there are certain things you have to do with that information, and that's a compliance requirement. If you handle any kind of personally identifiable information, PII, then yes, there's different compliance requirements with that. If you handle protected health information of any employee, you don't have to just be a doctor's office. You could potentially have something that way. You have compliance requirements around that. Now, just because you have to doesn't necessarily mean that you will. And just because you have to doesn't necessarily mean that depending on the size of your company, the information that you have, that you will see an impact of not complying. And I think that's where lots of companies kind of like trip up on that. They think, well, it doesn't apply to me because nothing's happening to me. No one's showing up. I'm not getting a fine. No one's knocking on my door and asking me to see all kinds of information. And so that's why many businesses don't think that they have a compliance requirement. And then those who have someone knocking on their door feel this heavy burden, like, why me? Mm-hmm. But it's not just you. It is everybody.
Yeah. And I love that parallel with taxes, because we all know, as the adage goes, nothing's certain in life but death and taxes. So it's been ingrained into our minds, right? And you see people who have gone to jail for income tax evasion. And when you see stuff like that, you think, oh man, like, I don't want that to be me. Like, I need to pay my taxes. Like, that's my responsibility. And so that's been ingrained into our minds over all these years. But the impact of not being compliant has not. And I think we're just starting to see that happen now with businesses. And one of the things, and you said something here which is really important, if you collect somebody's first name, last name, and their email address, you have PII. Yeah. You have that. You are collecting that information, and you have a responsibility to make sure that that information stays secure.
There's also there's legislated compliance, right? Like HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley-SOX. There's CMMC, like the things like that are either legislated or you're working for the government and it's required in order to do these kinds of things. But compliance is not just not just like some bigger entity and body forcing you to do something. There are, right now, you can't even get some insurance for your business, some cybersecurity insurance, unless you meet some certain kinds of requirements. And we're talking about that as compliance. You must comply with these baseline security practices if you want to get insurance. And then also compliance can be driven internally in an organization too by policy. So if an organization says it's our policy that all passwords must contain 15 characters, then you must comply with that policy. So compliance can apply to an organization at many different levels. And I think that gets confusing too.
The word compliance is getting thrown around all over the place these days, but what does it really mean? Also, why should a small business even care about it? If you're not a government contractor, a healthcare provider, or a financial services firm, what does compliance really even matter? Compliance is now impacting all businesses in the United States, and not just for the businesses it's been mandated for. Leia shares with us how compliance is the framework not just for keeping our businesses safe from cyber attacks, but also for ensuring that our data always remains intact and available. So what would you say to a business that wants to manage their cyber risk with a compliance framework? They're just thinking, hey, I have no idea what to do here. I understand the need to keep this data safe, but I have no idea where to begin or what to do. What would you say to them?
Oh my goodness, that's a great question, because it's hard to say, like, where do you start? Because if you go talk to an IT person is going to steer you towards buying a tool set, a security tool set, and saying, this is how we're going to secure you. This is how you're going to become compliant. But it's not all about tool sets, and you can't buy your way secure. You can't. Yeah. And so I think that people go the wrong direction, or think that it's going to cost me a lot of money because I have to buy tools. I usually recommend, I don't want to say I get lucky, but a lot of my clients do have certain kinds of compliance requirements already. So we can look at that, and we can manage the organization and the approach, the policies, the procedures, the tools we put in place to whatever is required. But if you don't have a requirement, then you can look at an existing framework like NIST Cybersecurity Framework. There's also CIS controls for the Center for Internet Security, and there's ISO 27001. There's all sorts of different frameworks that you could potentially look at and decide that you're going to manage to those frameworks, or select one of them, and then use that as this is going to be my roadmap for the things that I have to do.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Super helpful. And hopefully these organizations have at least some kind of IT person working for them, whether it's internally or outsourced, that know what those things are and would have some kind of an idea of how to begin to implement those things. Because I think you're right. It always is a tool set that's being thrown in everybody's face. And I think you and I both know that the tool set is something that ideally is supposed to come after you drive all that policy and put all those things in place.
Right. So there's three kinds of controls you can put in place. There's technical controls, right? That's your tool sets. Administrative controls, which are oftentimes policy, procedure, those kinds of things, and physical controls. And all of those are required and important in order for you to have a good program. And if all you do is go straight to, well, I want the silver bullet, tell me what thing to buy, and then I'll be secure, you're gonna go in the wrong direction, spend a lot of money, and you're never gonna get secure.
Yep. And that's the thing that I see, as I'm sure you do too, that these administrative and physical controls, they just don't exist.
Yeah. So, okay. Shoot, I could really go off on a tangent here, especially about physical controls, because that's probably one of the things that is overlooked. So most organizations know they should have policy in place. They just don't want to write policy because it's boring. Well, for most people, I like it, but there are special people in the world like me, Ross, that the world needs people like me.
Thank God. Thank God.
But the physical controls are a lot of the things that people tend to overlook. Most of the time, it's because they're entirely too trusting. But if you like, who's allowed to enter your facility? Who's allowed, who's authorized to be there? What can they access when they get in? Can they just walk right into your server room? Can they plug their laptop into a port in the wall and get right on your network? I was just last week, I was at a conference that we did this early morning session called the Cybersecurity Slam. Me and a bunch of other cybersecurity people are up on stage talking about this and rapping about stories. And the guy next to me was saying how he was engaged to do a physical penetration test. And all he did was get like a $15 AT&T shirt and like jeans and some work boots and a fake work order, and he got into like these enterprise environments and was able to get into, and in one case he was trying to like, he had one of those under the door little apparatuses to kind of pull the knob on the other side, and he's doing this, and then suddenly the door opens in his face and it's someone that works there, and they're like, well, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm so sorry, we were testing the locks, I'm here from AT&T. She's like, oh, okay. Leaves the door open for them and they just walk right inside. That's wow.
Yep. That's an organization that's lacking some internal training for their staff. And the policy to drive it. This next story that Leia shares with us is about a government contractor who possesses confidential government data. Now, you'd think that a business like this would be taking data security very seriously, and since, this is our government, it's critical to protect that data and prevent it from falling into the hands of our adversaries. Even more astonishing is that we've had cybersecurity requirements in place for federal contractors for many years, like the Federal Acquisition Regulation 52.204.21, which required contractors to meet 15 basic cyber hygiene controls. But the problem is, very few organizations have actually taken any serious action to meet these standards and become compliant. So I gotta believe you've seen, in all of your experience with this, you've seen some pretty crazy compliance violations. Like, tell me about one that was just so just off the wall that you're like, what?
Oh my gosh, like there really are so many. I guess one of my favorites is that we, for CMMC compliance, and actually for like most of these frameworks, if you look at them, physical security is an important thing. In other words, like, you can't just walk in and gain access to a server, network equipment, or things like that. And one organization I was working with, they didn't have, because of where they had the entrance to like the internet and the switches and where all of like the network cables came back into, it was a mechanical room. And this mechanical room was not cooled at all. So it was okay and fine in the winter time, but as soon as it got a little warm, like, it was unbearably hot. And this equipment, you have to keep it cool. So if it starts to get hot, it will just overheat and die. And the mechanical room was also at the front of the building in the foyer, right? So like, as soon as you walk in, here's the mechanical room on the right, wide open, with like everything was in there, the firewall, the server, like everything was right there, freaking open but you had to buzz yourself in, right? Like, you couldn't just walk in, you had to buzz yourself in, you had to show your ID, you had to get a visitor badge, but then it was like, boom, right here, everything's like wide open. And then it was a little bit of a stretch, but then they finally restricted people from being able to have their cell phones in the facility because they had like very sensitive information there. They were taking for their business process, they would take pictures of the things they would manufacture for their clients on like personal cell phone devices. Ooh. So we're talking about like a lockdown facility that is producing product for the government and the supply chain, and they're taking, so like, you You like after you get into this lockdown facility, you can walk right in and access everything there. And then the people are throughout the plant taking pictures on their cell phones. Why? Because the customer asked for it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like there are so many things here. And so we had, baby steps, right? The easiest thing to do in a situation like that was to have them change this policy and just have special devices that were allowed to take pictures. The bigger problem is this mechanical room, because there's a real cost to that, because you either have to put a lot of money into cooling that in some way, which is going to be very hard, or you have to pick it all up and move it, which is another like tens of thousands of dollar cost to do that.
Yeah. I feel like it's like somebody who runs 5 miles a day and calls themselves a health nut, but then lives on nothing but pizza and beer.
Yes, right? Yes. Exactly.
Like, you're not. You're missing a huge piece of the puzzle here. Man. Whether we own our business or we're in the position of leadership in our business, each of us owns risk. Just like when you get into your car and drive, you accept certain levels of risk. Your car has airbags, anti-lock brakes, lane departure warnings, crash sensors, and more. In fact, most features of a car are safety features. But despite all of that, before you drive, you still put on your seatbelt. So why do people do this? They do it because they understand the risks of driving or riding in a car, and they want to protect themselves. It's no different when it comes to protecting your business, not just from cyber attacks, but also from downtime and data failures. The problem is most business owners and leaders don't understand these risks the same way they understand the risk to their lives and the lives of their passengers when it comes to driving in a car.
In the core of this is organizational risk, whether it is the risk of losing contracts or business because you are not doing the things that you need to do, or whether the risk is that you are exposed to insiders that are going to end up hurting your company, or what we call the insider threat, or external malicious actors that could really have a bad impact on the business, either by taking you down for a long time, a certain amount of time, or just like destroying your reputation. There's so many things that could happen right there. But organizations are they're not coming down to that most important thing of thinking about what is my organizational risk, and then building out a program from there. They go to the outside and just see this, like all of this heavy stuff that they have to do, and they think, why me, right? But if you start there at that risk, then it helps you understand what we're doing. We're putting steps in to mitigate that risk. You walk around thinking all the time, this is not going to happen to me. And because of that, you don't plan a certain way. Let me give you a great example. Ross, you and I are going to die someday. Right. But we all walk around every single day not realizing that we're going to die someday, actually pushing it off and saying it's not going to happen. I don't know. Did you know I used to work in the death industry?
I did not.
I did. I sold cemetery property and I buried people.
Wow.
Now I just I don't bury people for real. I just bury people kind of like, I'm kidding. But
we won't talk about those skeletons.
Right. But I would sell cemetery property pre-need. And so that was like, that's a great way to like break into sales, trying to be like, hi, would you like to buy a place in this mausoleum? So
That's being proactive.
Yeah, it is. Men would sit there and they would like, and I'm not kidding, they'd look me dead in the eye and they'd be like, I'm not going to die. And I'm like, yes, you are. Nope. No, I'm not. And obviously, like the man knows he's going to die. But what he doesn't want to do is talk about it because he can pretend like it's way off there in the future, right? So businesses experience things like this most often for things like the continuity or the backup of their data. They don't think it's going to happen to them, that either it's going to get ransomed or something's going to get deleted until it does, and then they're in pain, and then they're like, crap, and now they're spending money. You don't want to get in a place of pain. You don't want your mother to die and suddenly, and then you have to run around buying all kinds of stuff, trying to getting basically raped by these companies that are sitting here waiting to take your money because you are vulnerable. You don't want that to happen to your business. If like something happens to your data, you're like, oh, my data is not important until you don't have it. And now suddenly you're like, crap, I can't do anything because I don't have financials. I don't have this. I can't prove that. You don't want to get into that point first. You want to assess your organizational risk first and then build out a program to mitigate that risk. That's why these controls are so helpful, because once you've identified the risk, then the controls help you to build that program to mitigate your risk.
Yep, absolutely. I love that. It's this constant pressure to have to prepare before something bad happens, which you know is ultimately going to happen. And I love the analogy of death, because we all know that we're talking about death and taxes here today, and there's certainty with both of them. And I think the piece of the puzzle that people are really struggling with is that getting compromised, experiencing a data breach is a certainty.
Yes.
It is going to happen whether you like it or not. And you are just not dealing with it because you're thinking about it as potentially this thing that is either way off in the future or just will never happen to you. So no reason to allocate any kind of resources to it right now.
Yeah. And the bigger thing, though, is that you are missing an opportunity to identify all the risk in your organization by not going through this. Any strong business that thinks about the risk, whether that's going to be competitors, that's a real risk, right? Or, internal people who are a risk to your organization. Oh my gosh, I don't even, how people, the business owners, managers that I talk to, they trust their people too much. And it's not to say we should walk around not trusting people necessarily, but it's oh, my people would never do that. Oh, this would never happen to me. But these are real risks to the company. They really are. And if we don't, you have to start there so that you know what kind of action to take. Otherwise, you don't know what your risk is. So how are you going to mitigate it? You're going to end up either you heard something somewhere and you're just going to ask for that thing, and maybe it doesn't cover all of your risk. Or you're going to engage an IT person or look at your IT director or your IT guy and just be mitigate my risk. And they're going to be I don't know what to do. Here's some security tools. And they cost a lot of money. And you didn't address the risk to your business.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Tools, tools, tools. IT people love their IT and security tools. Tools can help automate tasks, improve communication, and stop cyber attacks. But tools alone are simply not enough. Also, how do you know that you have the right tools? And how do you know you aren't overspending on your tools? How many tools has your organization purchased that you haven't fully utilized or utilized at all? Buying tools without understanding the organizational risk that exists can be a huge money suck. So, how do you stop it? So what can those IT people do? What can they do right now, short of just going out and finding tools? Because that's always the solution, right? Is to go buy a tool and that tool fixes everything and then it sits on the shelf and never gets used. What do you do? What can they do right now?
Well, this is what I'd recommend. I'd recommend that you choose a framework to manage towards, because that's going to read it in depth and really understand. Don't just look at it and be oh, this looks good, but understand what that looks like in real life in the business, how it's lived in the organization, and then start to get your brain around that so you can figure out what kinds of actions you should take and what kinds of things are missing. And then there's tons of books out there. This is a really good one. It's called The Cyber Defense Matrix. By Sunil Yu. There's also he's had tons of I think he did a TED Talk, tons of YouTube videos where he talks about this too. And this helps you because it makes you across the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. It makes you think about the devices, the networks, the users, the data, all those assets that you need to protect. And if you're going to select tools, because most of the time IT people have the pressure of selecting tools, this also helps you to identify, well, if I select a tool, what is it going to actually address here? And then instead of spastically buying things or, shiny penny syndrome, this looks cool, let's implement it. It gives you a better approach that you can make better decisions with. And then also recognizing that an organization can't just run on tools. You do need both policy and procedure So start with creating some IT policies, IT security policies. It's your Bible that will guide you. And then if management must sign off on those, and then you use that for your decision making on what you do for the administrative controls and the technical controls and the physical controls.
So really just a framework to go and put this in place. Like, and it sounds to me like what you're saying is identify what those pain points are, those problems that you know you have, and connect them with the solutions. And it can't all be about tools. You know that there's a problem that you've got employees using personal devices and you don't know what's on those devices. You know that there's a problem that you are not controlling how data enters and exits the network. You know that there's a potential permissions problem with how sharing works when you have guests or just anonymous users. Like, you can easily identify all of these types of things. So, you know, like as an IT person, you know that these are a pain point. You know that you have to address them. And it's a matter of finding, I guess, would you say it's a matter of finding that framework because it gives you the verbiage and the process for exactly how to address it? And then that puts the pieces of the puzzle together to allow you to facilitate filling that gap.
Yes, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There's already a lot of things out there already for you to select and then manage to that framework. So start there.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Now, the one thing I do know that a lot of these IT people struggle with is how to convince their bosses, their management, the CEO, that this is something that's worthwhile spending money on. And I think as much as they may get this and grasp this whole concept, translating that to the boss could be a real struggle. Is that something that you can give them some advice with, or maybe just some pointers on the way they could approach it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So executives want to know two things. How long is it going to take and how much is it going to cost me? You have to change your conversation to it being a business conversation and not a technical conversation. So once you look at that framework and you can kind of see a roadmap, then you have that, then you present them with a plan. And even if it's like, you know, like a very broad kind of, here's some milestones along the roadmap kind of plan, and then help them understand how it's tied to risk for the organization. So that risk mitigation, you have to change your language if you want them to listen to you. Because if you just go to them with a technical solution, all they see is dollar signs and they don't understand the reason why you have to do this.
Yeah, that's great. Like, I think you got to relate it to something that they understand and the loss that they could really see in their own mind, or why they would need to spend money on it. Because I think we all, as humans, when we identify that there's a potential loss there, we're willing to put resources toward preventing that loss. But without the understanding of what that is, I don't think it's ever going to happen, and you'll never get any traction.
Correct.
So what's one piece of advice? If you could give like one piece of advice to any IT people out there that are kind of struggling through this right now, they know that it's important. They know that their organization has to better manage their cyber risk, that they've got to have this process and policy in place, or maybe they've got some of it and they just know it really needs to be improved. What's one piece of advice you'd give them so they could start to overcome this?
Stop looking for a silver bullet. I'm telling you, because like, you look at it all and you think this is overwhelming if I want to do it right. Where is it? Where's the easy button? Where's the silver bullet? And then people will show up on your porch and say, I've got the easy button. I've got the silver bullet. And you're going to buy into that instead of really taking a step back and just doing this in a very methodical, systematic approach.
Yep. I love that. There's no easy button for this. And I think one of the biggest things that really relates there is that even if there was, it would never build the culture of compliance and security that the organization needs to have with an easy button. And without that, nothing is going to truly be managed. Nothing's truly going to be safe. Nothing's truly going to be secure in the way that it needs to be to align with true compliance and cyber risk management.
You got it.
Awesome. Leia, this has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed talking about this. We can talk about this anytime you want because I love this stuff and I love that you love this stuff. But But thank
I'm
you
glad
so
that
much
I have.
for coming on today.
Thank you. I'm glad that I have someone to geek out about it with. Thank you for that, Ross.
Hey, listen, I'm a huge geek. I'm just, as much as I hated high school, I love life now because I find people that actually like to geek.
The geeks rule! Woo!
That's right, man. That's right, man. We're finally getting the last laugh. Thanks again, Leia.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ross.
I want to thank my guest today, Leia Shilobod, CEO of Intech Solutions. Also, a great big thank you to our listeners and viewers for tuning into our show today. We sincerely appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Legends of IT wherever you consume podcasts. This way, you'll be notified as new episodes become available. Until next time, on Legends of IT.